Hello and welcome to the DJ Force 10 in Conversation podcast, episode 145. My very special guest on today's show is Jesse Kage. He is a US rock radio DJ, also multiple podcast host as well. But yeah, I found out about this guy. We sort of go about it in the podcasting interview itself. But when I moved to Tampa with my family. The first couple of years wasn't working as such, so as in I wasn't working, looking after the kids and whatnot, and so we just had the radio on in the background instead of the TV all day, the radio on, and it was 9 times out of 10 it was tuned to 98 Rock, and that's how I found out about Jesse Kage. Since then, followed him on. You'll hear about all this in the interview, so I'm not going to spoil anything else for you, but yeah, just it was an absolute pleasure to speak to him. He's got a new podcast out right now. It's every Thursday it's released. It's called First Match. Now that is he has a love for pro wrestling. So what he's doing on that one, he is interviewing pro wrestlers and getting their origin stories. So the way they made it into the business, any kind of like trips and falls they had, etc., getting in, or the stories behind all that. The first episode he had up or has up is with Luke Gallows, formerly of WWE, and this week I believe. He's got the Blue Meanie on his show as well, on his current episode. So do go check that out. In fact, go subscribe to it now so you can stop this, or even you can listen to what you're doing. Go find it. If you love pro wrestling, you'll love this podcast, so go find it. You can find Jesse Kage as well if you want to follow up on that. He's at Jesse Kage on Instagram and Twitter. And if you're on Facebook, The Kage Cult, that's KAGEKULT. That's his like Facebook page for all his projects and everything that he's got going on. But like I said, it was an absolute damn pleasure to speak to him. But I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. I'll be back again next week with a whole bunch of other podcasts as well. Got some nice ones next week. Not going to spoil it for you. So, it'd be a nice surprise for your subscribers and everything. But yeah, feel free to hit me up over the weekend on the socials as well. Let me know what you liked. If you're checking out the bands that I'm featuring, stuff like that. If you check out First Match, please let me know. Hit me up on whatever social and just say, yeah, I listened to it. I'm not going to take up much more of your time. Here is Jesse Kage. Enjoy. Welcome to today's show. I have a very special guest. I have Jesse Kage. Now, my UK listeners may not have heard of you, but you are a native of the United States of America. You are a radio DJ primarily over there, but you have other projects as well. But welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure, man. Like I said before we hit record, discovered you when I lived in Tampa for the 5 years that I was there. The first couple of years there I listened to 98 Rock for, well, I'd say religiously, between you and I think The Bone, I think was the other one that I listened to. But no, just sort of the novelty of having a rock station was great, because in the UK we don't have any like dedicated, on at least on the main airwaves, like dedicated rock stations. Sure. There's a few on digital. I work for one that's internet based as well, so it kind of you can get it, but not like when you're sat in your car, basically.
Sure.
Cool. Well, I wanted to sort of get you on because I'm doing a special on DJs. Now, my sort of like background generally with that is sort of like performance DJing, so scratch DJing, club DJing, stuff like that, and that's what I do myself. But I also do radio, as I mentioned. But I wanted to get you on because you've been doing radio for, well, I don't know exactly how long, but as long as I can remember on that front. I was just sort of like...
Yeah, I've been in the radio business it was funny, I was literally doing the math this morning, and it's just under 25 years.
Oh, wow.
Which is surreal since I'm only 43 years old, so.
What I wanted to find out is how you started out in radio. Like, what path did that, how did you get on that path, basically?
Yeah, I started radio when I was a junior in high school, so third year in high school, and I had a buddy who was doing a radio show, and he asked if I would like to come out one night and be a part of the show. He was doing like a Saturday night heavy metal show, and I was like, yeah, that'd be rad. I'll definitely do that. So went out and just fell in love, man. Fell in love with the business, fell in love with that microphone, that fickle bitch we call a microphone. And and I really never looked back. I mean, I did a couple things, because I was young at the time, so I was trying to find myself. I trained to be a pro wrestler. I managed a health club. I did all sorts of fun stuff, but radio was a thing that was always there for me. And I was 2 years into college and decided that I was wasting my money, and I was already doing what I love to do. So found a full-time radio gig and just really never looked back.
Cool. So has it always been like predominantly rock radio you've done, or has it been sort of a general multi-genre?
Oh man, I've done everything. My first big gig, I was working for a top 40 radio station. So you got to picture it. At the time, I still had hair, so I had long hair down to my waist, Metallica t-shirts, and I'm spinning fucking Celine Dion tracks. So, in the radio business, you do what you got to do to get in. You don't always get your first choice that first go around. You got to prove yourself, like in any industry. And luckily, I was able to do that. I was able to prove myself and create some longevity for myself. And, finally, years later, I did top 40 and pop radio for years, probably 3 or 4 years. And then finally got a break in rock radio. And, man, never looked back. Once I hit my stride doing that, I started doing some rock radio, doing overnights at 103.1 The Buzz in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Nice.
From there, went to 97X here in Tampa. And then I got my super big break when I got hired to do afternoons at 98 Rock. And I was there for 8 years, I think. So I've kind of done it all, but rock radio is definitely where my heart is at.
No, that's really cool, because like I say, it's a novelty here to sort of have that on a sort of, I'd say, a mainstream sort of airwave, like FM radio stream, if you will. And it was one of the things, like when I moved there, that because I wasn't able to work for for about 2 years when I first moved there, I had the radio on constantly, and it was you in the afternoon. I think Big Rig, stuff like that, if they're still going there and stuff, because obviously listening to it now is a bit more difficult. But no, it was just really cool, and you got me into some like cool bands as well, just with some of the sort of local stuff you did. I think Clench Fist was one of them that I really like, a local band to the area. I don't know if they're still going.
They got some new stuff coming out. They just sent me a new single. I have not had a chance to listen to it yet, but that's on the agenda for later today. So those guys are still crushing it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's all. I'm gonna have to dig that out then, because I went to a show you put on at it's the place next to Janus Live, the club.
Club Detroit.
That's it, Club Detroit. You put on Fozzy there, and and Clench Fist for the support
for that club for a while there. So
were you okay?
Yeah,
cool.
Club Detroit was a legendary club here in St. Pete years and years ago. I used to actually, when I was living in West Palm, which is about 4 hours from here, I used to drive over when I was in high school to go see death metal shows at Club Detroit. So when the opportunity came up to reopen Club Detroit, I know the owner of the building, and him and I sat down and recreated Club Detroit. Unfortunately, too many chefs in the kitchen, as they say, and things didn't work out. They ended up moving on. Actually, I ended up moving on first, and then they sold the club. But, we had a fun little short run there, and it was fun to kind of revive Club Detroit. Yeah,
no, I mean, it was a nice little thing. I mean, I went to mainly shows down in St. Pete, like State Theatre and local 662. Or was, I should say.
Yep.
And was.
That's another place I was a bit getting ready to buy in. My buddy owns that place too. So
okay, cool. But no, I was just like getting into sort of bands in that area, and I knew you were very active in the community and stuff like that within the sort of like rock community. Was that something that you really wanted to sort of like delve into generally? Obviously, you're quite entrepreneurial, and we'll go into more of the stuff that you're doing. Like you're always sort of like pushing certain medias and stuff. But was that like sort of like club and running a sort of like a scene basically? Was that sort of something you wanted to be or do?
Yeah, I just always wanted to use whatever power my voice on the radio had to help people out. And that went a lot of different ways. I mean, you listen to the show, obviously we were chock full of dick and fart jokes, but when serious stuff went down, I like to think we were amongst the first to kind of help get the community to come together and rally around, whether that was if an unfortunate situation where we lost a first responder or something like that. We would always try to make sure that we were setting stuff up. And then that then goes out to that local scene where I wanted this to be a thriving rock scene. And knowing a lot of the bands and, again, having a pretty powerful voice here in the market, it was my duty to help to get the word out about these bands and to help promote shows and to help sponsor shows. And even if it was just me showing up at a show, if that helped them out, then I was all about it. I just wanted to be there and help this scene grow, which, it's seen its flows, but I think there's going to be a resurgence here pretty soon, actually.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because when I was there was some good bands, sort of like, they're all helping each other out, which is what a scene should be. Like you had national acts come through, and they'd stack the sort of like bill with local bands, which was great. And then those bands would be selling tickets, which and they'd be selling it for each other. It's not just themselves, not just out for themselves. It was like bands like Cypher Machine and Psychotribe and the Dude and like, just I'm trying to reel off bands that I remember now. But it was a really cool. So I was going to ask you. You probably already answered it, but I was just going to ask you what the scene was like there now, because obviously I've been away from there we're coming up 3 years now. So it was about the time I think State Theatre closed, which seemed to be a hub of a lot of the shows. I was just sort of curious how that kind of affected the scene there.
Yeah, again, there's the ebbs and flows of any music scene, and I definitely felt like there was a little bit of a lull, only because, especially in St. Pete, we definitely lost some of those clubs where those bands could play at. Local 662, they went out. Foo Bar went out. The State, obviously, they went out, but they are actually reopening. It's going to be called the Floridian Social Club, I think. Yeah. And, they went in and they restored that building. Curious to see exactly what kind of shows they bring, because it seems like it's a little bit more hoity-toity, which is not a bad thing, by the way. I'm not one of those people that, you can't cry over the past, man. Things change. Downtown St. Pete has evolved so much. You can call it gentrification or whatever you want to call it, but it happens. And it happens when people start moving into an area and money starts moving into the area. So that 600 block with Foo Bar and, again, Local 662 and State Theater, that was a different beast when you were living here. Now it's definitely changed. And again, it changed for the better or the worse. It depends on who you ask. I think there's some great restaurants there. I do miss the fact that, again, you mentioned before, I'm an entrepreneurial kind of guy. I had my hands in, there was a bar over there called Octave, which was right across the street from Local. Yep. And I was part owner of Octave, and it was a cool karaoke bar / live music venue. So we were one of the first dominoes to fall, really. I think more for us is just based on we had a shitty landlord, but it would have happened eventually, just with the way that the rents are going there. It's astronomical what they're asking for pricing. I actually, like I alluded to with Local 662, I know the owner. He's a good friend of mine. We were going to do this really cool concept and call it Cage's Green Room. And basically it's a bar where you would have walked into a backstage. So picture an Aerosmith backstage type bar with, drugs on the floor and amps and, classy, but still, rock. Yeah. And so we were going to do that. But the rent was going to just make it very cost prohibitive for us. So we decided to cut ties. Yeah, no, I noticed, because I still subscribe to obviously a few pages of the sort of places there, like Daddy Cool and stuff like that. Because I know they ended up moving to another area of St. Pete. Yep. But my wife used to work downtown in St. Pete, one of the offices down there. Actually, it was the place opposite the cinema where they had the open air mall. I
can't remember what it's called, but yeah, we're down near the sort of like waterfront near the like marina and everything. So I used to spend a lot of time down that way, just sort of hanging out, like take the kids down there, down to the pier when it was there. And I love just like hanging out in St. Pete. That was a sort of like great sort of like thing of that area, because I actually lived up in Tampa, up in Hillsborough County, so it was quite a trek to make it down. But yeah, no, I just sort of curious how the area was going, because I still sort of keep in touch with a couple of the guys from down that way. Yeah, just sort of curious as to see, because I know John Stafari, who used to run a lot of the shows, is based elsewhere now. He's obviously still running shows. I think he's still doing stuff with like the Brass Mug and things. But yeah, no,
there's definitely cool stuff that's going on, even through obviously the quarantine and everything going on with COVID. There's a heartbeat that is still very strong, even through all the shit that's going on. And there's a lot of the artists that play a lot of the bars, like Katie Talbert and Will Erickson and those guys. Katie actually started a DTSP live feed where local musicians can come in. She built a studio in her house where through this every night she's still putting on live shows for Facebook or Instagram or any number of social media outlets. So I think when we get to the end of this thing, the people that are able to still survive and still be able to play music, and I don't mean survive isn't a fatality, obviously, but survive and not have to get a regular day job and still get to play music. I think there's going to be a real thriving scene here. And even for those weekend warriors, I think, again, there's a resurgence happening, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to kind of watching it from afar. I am intending on coming back over, but I'm going to be watching it from afar for now. So, but I want to take on to what you're doing right now, because you've just released a brand new podcast. We'll talk about that, because you've got a few podcasts out there as well, which I got into while I was there. But we'll talk about the new one. It's called First Match. I actually listened to the first episode today because it launched today with Doc Gallows. I really enjoyed it because I like that. I mean, I'm a fan of professional wrestling. Have been since I was a very small child back here in England, and sort of evolved from that. And coming over to the States the time I did was absolutely fantastic, because like it was on at a regular time, which was one thing, because normally it's on at like 1 a.m. here, like if you want to watch the live shows.
Right.
But yeah, no, and just sort of, and then finding out that Tampa was kind of a hub for a lot of the professional wrestlers. So literally where I worked in Tampa, like bumping into these guys, and I'm like, oh shit, that's him. Like kind of doing a little fan out, even though I'm close. I'm 40 years old. So, I was mid-30s at the time. So it's a little weird for me to be like, fanning out of this sort of thing. But it was just crazy. I mean, I knew sort of like the Hogan connection and stuff for the area, but I didn't realize like Cena and like Jericho, people like that was like in that area. What is that? Was that the reason you kind of moved to the area? Was that a sort of like thing? Because I know like you said, you dabbled in professional wrestling, and you mentioned it in the podcast where you actually moved to this area for Dean Malenko's school.
Yeah, that was back in the late 90s when I had moved over for wrestling, and like I said in the podcast, didn't end up lasting that long just because I had some shitty knees from playing high school football and multiple surgeries. But I ended up leaving, going back to West Palm, and then years later, early 2000s, so I moved back to Tampa. But that was more for a radio gig. That was for the 97X gig. I got called up and came over and did that, and then fell in love with the area and already knew that I loved Tampa. And yeah, the wrestling connection is great. And I've been fortunate enough to make friends with a lot of the boys and get to hang out with a lot of them, and which makes my connections good for First Match, for the new podcast I just launched.
Yeah. So what can we expect from the podcast? Because obviously you had Doc Gallows on there for your first episode. Can you give away anything as to your sort of future guests at the moment, or are you kind of keeping that under your hat, if you will?
Yeah, I have your national treasure, Nick Aldis, coming on, which will be cool. He's the NWA's World Heavyweight Champion. I've got Chris Jericho coming on. Rob Van Dam is coming on. The Blue Meanie, Brian Heffron. Nice. Raven. Corey Graves from SmackDown. The list just goes on. And then I got some other legends in there that I'm talking to, and just haven't got them wrapped up yet. But it's going to be fun, man. It's basically just an origin story for our favorite wrestlers. There's so many podcasts. There's a million wrestling podcasts out there, and there's a lot of really, really good ones. But I hadn't discovered one that is kind of going down the lane that I'm going down with the origin story and going back to their childhood and where they found their love of pro wrestling and how they made their break in and training and that first match. And then, going beyond that with other experiences they've had in the world of professional wrestling. And there's just so many interesting stories. Again, you heard the one with Doc today, and I don't want to give too much away, but thinking about that one part where his dad pushes him backstage so he can meet up with Arn Anderson.
Yes.
Just, random cool little stories like that really aren't going to pop up on many other shows, because a lot of the wrestling podcasts are either talking about the shows from that week from whatever promotion, or they're talking about what's coming up, or the angles that are happening now. So I just thought it would be a cool idea to go back in time and just start from the beginning. So I'm glad you dug it. I'm getting some pretty good feedback on it. I hope everybody checks it out. You can find First Match on pretty much every major podcasting platform. Only one that we're not on yet is iHeart, but that just takes a minute. We've submitted it, so it should be on there any day now. But Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, all those you can find it. Cool. Just put in First Match.
Excellent. No, it's really I really enjoyed it, and I love the concept of the origin story for these guys, because it's always especially just not to give any sort of examples from the Gallows one, but having that kind of moment of where they are they're so green in what they're doing, not just in their matches, but trying to get noticed by the people in charge. And it's always some kind of real kind of it's kind of like a geeky story, really, or something that's full of just mistakes. And it's it's like they just kind of not intentionally fell into it, but they just didn't know how to approach it, so they just kind of did all this crazy shit that you wouldn't normally do if you were kind of if you knew what you were kind of supposed to do.
Right. Yeah, it's a comedy of errors on a lot of levels, which again makes for a good podcast. No,
I look forward to future episodes on that front, because like I say, I've got a love for professional wrestling. I watch it as a kid with talking of our sort of heritage of wrestling, Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks and all that, which were on free to view TV back then. I used to set up my room, the front room, take the cushions off the couch, and just sort of wrestle with my brothers, and doing all that kind of stuff. I never got any further than that, but I've got friends who kind of operate in the UK independent scene now, which is really cool. I'm watching them doing what they're doing and sort of coming up with their own stories and personas and all that kind of stuff, and it's really cool.
It's interesting. The European scene is very different. So and I'm not going to give too much away, but again, coming up in a couple weeks, Nick Aldis is going to be on. It was interesting to hear the different ways that training happens over there, and with these camps and these different things they have going on. So, definitely be on the lookout for that. But yeah, totally different. And that's what I love about this. I'm hoping to get guys from all over the world on the podcast, because everybody does have that different, comedy of error roads. Yeah. But then, each country is going to have a totally different way to do that. So I'm working on getting some guys from Japan on, and hopefully have some translators. But, and then, I'd love to get down to Arena, Mexico, and do some stuff live down there. So, it's just exciting, man. We'll kind of see where this evolves to.
So what are you doing to kind of because obviously you've had things like 98 Rock. I know you moved to Atlanta for a bit as well to do some radio up there, but obviously you're back in St. Pete. How do you sort of not fund this podcast, but what are your sort of ways now? Are you still doing any kind of radio work, or are you doing any promotional work at all, or is it just this podcast you're doing? Because I remember from back in, if we take it back to when you set up, I think it was the Fisher and Cage podcast, which I remember listening to you and I can't remember his first name, but Fisher.
Fisher, yeah.
That's it. But you guys ended up setting up an office downtown, and it was always a running joke that you couldn't make too much noise. But what was that sort of process? Are you hoping to do the same sort of thing as this, of having, say, a studio set up? Obviously, once COVID's kind of hopefully passed and everything, you can actually do something like this. Is that the sort of general plan, is to try and kind of, work off of this, or have you got other things in the fire at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I've got multiple shows. This is just the first one I'm launching with this new series. But, we learned a lot for the Fisher and Cage stuff. We got some really great sponsors and we made a little bit of money up front, but we didn't spend that money properly. Getting a studio and all that kind of stuff wasn't the best idea. We should have gone way more small scale than that, and we may have been able to succeed until we could have made the more money.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just learned a lot, man. I learned a lot about how to sell, and because I've always been on the talent side, so I was able to glean information on how to get advertisers for podcasts and that kind of fun stuff. And so I'm working on advertising for First Match, but my agency is also pitching it to all the major companies. I've got two right now that we're dealing, and one of them has another contract. I'm just waiting for some lawyer shit to get taken care of on that one, and then I can announce what's happening with that.
Cool.
But as far as funding this is, taking, and this is not a slag on anybody who podcasts for a hobby, because I think podcasting is fantastic on any level. But it's trying to take a product and go to that next level and have one of the big boys come in and really throw the money down for us and help with advertising and that kind of fun stuff.
Cool.
And luckily, again, I've been able to, through my agency, get those immediate contacts and get this product in front of the major players. With so many podcasts out there and anybody hoping to make money on podcasting, just keep hustling, keep hustle. But know that, like anything, it takes contacts, and find those contacts of people who can get you to the right people and get you in front of the right people. Because if not, you're going to get lost in the sea of hundreds of thousands of podcasts, as we both know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, this is a hobby of mine. I have a day job that I do to pay for everything, and I just enjoy speaking to, I mainly speak to musicians, like rock musicians, as a sort of general topic of the show. But I'm trying to branch out.
I think that's great. I think what an amazing way to just really delve into what interests you, and then find a like-minded group of people. I mean, it's brilliant. I think what you're doing is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, no, I mean, I enjoy it. It's definitely, especially during this COVID thing, I've been releasing podcasts every day for the last month or so, and I've talked to bands like Lamb of God and Mushroom Head and all that kind of stuff, and it's just sort of, it's actually been quite nice to speak to people other than my family, so that's sort of that. But no, it's just sort of something that I'm aware that you, contact wise, if I wanted to make money from this, then I would have to go through, because I have connections within sort of the music industry. Like I said before, I've got an internet radio show as well, which I actually do as a hobby as well, so it's kind of, and that's that's based around the sort of conversations that we have on here, but it's also incorporating actually playing music, because I don't have the license to play full music on this show.
Right.
But no, I was just on that sort of front, I was just curious if that was something. But obviously, if you've got those contacts, and the industry for podcasting is changing. The massive deal Joe Rogan's just signed.
Jesus Christ, man!
I'm I saw it yesterday, and I was like for an exclusive podcast, a thing that you get given away for free. Generally, right. Just to have it on, obviously, they want the exclusivity on their platform, which is fine, which I get, because they want to be the dominant streaming service. And
that's why these guys are paying. I mean, that's exactly right. You have the iHearts and Spotify and iTunes now is starting to shell out some money too, because people are really seeing the value in this. Because it's a free product that people are picking up, but when you got, especially a guy like Rogan, which is millions and millions of followers, listeners. Sure, you can charge an arm and a leg for an ad on his show, because you're getting so much exposure. And the thing that's cool about podcasting that's different than radio, and this is for anybody who's listening to this who would be interested in advertising on your show, it's one of those things where it's so much more intimate.
Yeah.
It's on the radio side, a lot of times it's just in the periphery. It's just out there.
Yep.
And, we hope that when we're talking and we're, doing the dick and fart jokes, that you're enjoying it and that you're a piece of it. But a lot of times it goes to the commercials, and what do? You either just totally zone it out, or you go to the next station. Whereas podcasting, man, you're in somebody's head. They're right there. Yeah. And you can weave in that content however you want. So from an advertiser standpoint, I encourage anybody listening to this to advertise on this podcast right here, right now.
Thank you. But no, what I also like about it is the long form interview. Like you say, with radio, I can get the guys in, we can do a promotional shoot for like 10 minutes, talk about their new release, and then bang, you're done. With the podcast, you get to go a little bit deeper, which is what I absolutely love. I like to sort of like delve a little bit more into the mind of the creative person that is behind the music, rather than just sort of asking the sort of what's your new album like, oh, it's going to be our heaviest one yet, or our most melodic one, or it's going to take you some, I like to sort of get the stories out of them as well, because I've had like new musicians on the show, like I'll say new musicians, new bands, and I've had like proper classic bands on the show as well. I've had like Yes and Kansas and all that kind of stuff, not to bloody name drop all the time, but but that's just cool, like though, man. That's great. No, they're great because they have the stories and they have a totally different perspective of the record industry as well, which I love to dig into, because when I sort of got into the music industry myself, it was kind of on the verge of the digital kind of like revolution, if you will. So it was, when I was in college, I was taught how to record stuff using reel to reel. Very little digital sort of like recording. Obviously that evolved over the time I was in a band. The MP3 became an asset at that point as well. And it's just sort of curious. Like I never got to sample what it was like back then to kind of like sell millions of records, if you will. Right. So I was asking these guys back then, what was it like? You're selling millions compared to now, where it's just sort of all based on streams, or it's based on numbers. It's quantified on an entity that you don't actually physically own. How does that affect them and stuff? And it's great. This is what I love. Like, you get that, and then you get the new band who have totally embraced this new technology and know exactly how to do it.
Yeah, it's funny because the old school cats, I mean, and we can throw ourselves into that because we can remember going down on a Friday on a release day and waiting in line to get our favorite CD, right? Or record or cassette or whatever the case may be. And not to be the old man, but it's really a shame that a lot of these kids will never have that experience. You don't have that experience of holding it, and reading the liner notes, right? I mean, that was one of the best parts about getting new shit, was reading those liner notes and holding it and having that, I would go through, and I was a huge Iron Maiden fan, still am a huge Iron Maiden fan, but whenever I'd get a new Iron Maiden record, they'd always have those cool inserts. So I'd be pulling out those inserts. I wish I would have kept intact now, but I'd cut them up and put them on my walls, right?
Yep.
Having that tangible, really cool thing. Again, you get the music digitally, fine, that's great.
Yeah.
But to sit there and listen to an entire record and read the liner notes and read the lyrics and have it there, that is just an experience that I wish that, kids today would to have.
Yeah, no, I mean, I still buy records on vinyl if I can, if the bands release it. I've got a couple of new releases right next to me right now, and that's what I love. I love it. It's like a piece of art, not just the music. Like, obviously that's one piece of the art, but the actual size of the artwork itself. So obviously a gatefold vinyl, you're looking at two sort of like 24-inch across kind of like, images. CDs, you had the little booklet, stuff like that, and obviously some bands made sort of like took advantage of that in as much as like Tool and stuff. They always do something quite cool with it. But no, I've always loved vinyl. I've always been like a vinyl DJ as well, so it's kind of in my nature. I've got stacks of the stuff sort of in my little studio right now, so it's like it's all sat there. But no, you're right, sort of lining up, the only experience they'll get of that would be like record store day or something,
sure.
where you do line up, but you're lining up for like exclusive reissues or whatever, and all that kind of stuff, which is cool, because I mean, I used to love record store day in Tampa. Actually, I used to go to Banana Music. And I didn't just buy the exclusive, I just went through all their records. I went down there quite a lot. So that's one thing I do miss. We do have record stores here, obviously. I've got friends who run them here and stuff, but they're not on that scale. They're not that huge, like, warehouse full of, like, dirty vinyl everywhere. So it's all good. But I got a couple of questions left for you, Jesse. I'm going to let you get on with the rest of your day because, don't want to keep you too long. But what I want to find out is basically these are sort of like just sort of my generic questions, if you will. But what are your what would you say your 3 albums were that really kind of define you as a person today? So the one that really kind of like got you into rock music, the one that kind of like really kind of like, you know, to just sort of got you into that scene.
It would have to be Iron Maiden, Somewhere in Time.
Nice.
My older brother's, who's 5 years older, he had his best friend, his name was Chris, and I would go down to Chris's house because he would have all these new records, and I'll never forget when he put on Somewhere in Time. I just lost my mind.
Nice.
And then immediately went back and started listening to, everything, whether, Power Slave or Killers or, just going through the whole catalog. And it was life changing. I went out the next day and made my parents buy me Iron Maiden t-shirts and all this shit. So I would say Maiden, GNR, Appetite, obviously. I think that's on a lot of our lists, just because of how raw that was. I remember when I first heard Guns N' Roses, I was watching MTV. Remember MTV used to do those, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning. After Headbangers Ball, they would do like live shows, live to tape shows from like the Roxy and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I remember one night after Headbangers Ball, it was Guns N' Roses, the small club, and they ripped through all of Appetite. And I remember being scared. Not scared enough to turn it off, but I felt nervous. Yeah. I felt like I was watching something I shouldn't be watching. And I loved every fucking second of it. Amazing. Every second. And again, I mean, that record, that's just one of those ones that just, totally sticks with you. So I think, those would have to be the top 2. And then obviously, from your time living here, how much I love Metallica. So
yeah, I was going to say mandatory Metallica at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, Master of Puppets could definitely be on that list as well. And contrary to what a lot of people think, I think that Justice is their best album. If it was produced better, it would be way better. But Justice front to back is the best Metallica album. And just to get there and get set off with the one video, to finally see a video from a band like that, that was industry changing. Yeah. So definitely, yeah. Long-winded answer. I gave you 4.
No, that's all good. That is all good. They're all fantastic albums, to be honest with you, so I don't mind. No, I love Iron Maiden, obviously being from the land of Iron Maiden. Guns N' Roses were pivotal for me when I was a kid. It was between them and Motorhead. And yeah, Metallica and Metallica, they're the kind of dominant force amongst all metal bands. So it's, you can't deny their, any of their influence or any of their sort of path, really. It's been meteoric, I think is probably the word, isn't it? Or it's,
and they've got balls, man, because people say they sold out. I just think they evolved. They did what they had to do, and they evolved. Yeah, and it came full circle because the latest shit is just a perfect mix of everything they had done. Yeah, I just think it's Hardwired is a great record. Yeah, it's a great record. It's probably the first Metallica front to back record since Justice that obviously let's not forget the Black Album, but I mean, everybody likes the Black Album, right? But I mean, you know what I'm saying? Going back, it's probably my second favorite front to back record from Metallica is what I should say.
Awesome. No, it's it's a damn good record. No, I enjoy most of the stuff they've done. So it's not like I wasn't like a massive skeptic during Saint Anger or anything, apart from obviously the production side of it, which everyone was. Sure. But no, their songwriting ability and the way they have adapted and evolved, and they've had to. They're not young men anymore, so doing stuff like from those early albums, Ride the Lightning and whatnot, it's going to be more and more difficult. So they've got to be able to do it to survive. To be honest,
absolutely.
So, but yeah, no, they're all cool. So finally, what are your hobbies away from this? Obviously, you've kind of turned, I guess, one of your sort of hobbies into something a bit more of a profession on that front with like the wrestling and sort of turning that into like the podcast stuff. But have you got any other like hobbies that you can sort of get up to?
Yeah, I actually just started picking my guitar back up. I played in bands for years growing up, and I, for whatever reason, unlike a lot of us who played guitar or any instrument when you're in high school and college, life happens and you put it down and you don't touch it for some reason. I don't know exactly why that happens.
Yeah.
For something that I loved so much. But I just recently re-picked up my guitar and have a rekindled love for playing guitar. So that's been filling my time outside of building these new podcasts. And quite frankly, I mean, hobby-wise, it's just creating. I just want to create.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like you said, my love of wrestling, which was a hobby, I've been able to turn that into something that hopefully very soon is going to be profitable for me. But yeah, I just like to create. Whether that's coming up with new ideas. I have a bunch of friends in marketing, so I like to help them out kind of pro bono.
Yeah.
So get a couple bucks for that. But again, it's just a hobby for me because I just enjoy the process.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, cool.
You know, and then masturbating and watching football. Not at the same time, though.
I was going to say it at the same time. Go back and watch
Although the lingerie football league, I would definitely masturbate to. And full disclosure, if the Miami Dolphins ever win a Super Bowl, probably masturbate to that as well.
I don't think anyone would blame me for that either. So. Cool. Well, Jesse, mate, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been great chatting to you. And yeah, I look forward to hearing more episodes of First Match and stuff like that. So,
hey, man, thank you so much for all the support. And if I could just throw out, I can be reached on the Twitter box.
Oh, yeah.
At Jesse Kage, JesseKage, and then also on Instagram, same thing, at Jesse Kage.
Cool.
Well, again, I appreciate you having me on, dude. Let's keep in touch.
Yeah, definitely. And all right, man. Well, have a good one, and yeah, have a good rest of your day.
All right, cheers, brother. Bye-bye.